Viewers, what is the definition of a good government? Conventional wisdom informs us it is a government capable of providing stable, efficient, and accountable governance. This answer sounds reasonable, and most politicians will be happy if they can check these three boxes while in office, especially prime ministers. But the Modi-led NDA governments often set more ambitious targets for themselves. They aspire to greater purpose. Prime Minister Modi has summed up his mantra for governance as, quote, reform, perform, and transform, unquote. If reform is seen as the starting point of a process that will bring about large-scale transformation, then the latest iteration of the NDA must demonstrate the resolve to boldly think out of the box. In the first two terms, the Modi administration showed that they could be counted upon to push the needle. Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, demonetization, GST, the bankruptcy code, Digital India, a move towards universal health insurance coverage, abrogation of Article 370 and 35A, the CAA, the hint of the NRC, the law criminalizing triple talaq, Make in India, 100% FDI in defense production, PM Kisan, 3 farm laws, and passing the 4 labor codes. Admittedly, some initiatives were met with resistance and were put in abeyance. But there's no doubting that the overwhelming mandate in Modi's favor was put to decisive use by NDA 1.0 and NDA 2.0. The question is whether Modi's third term, where he's hobbled by the lack of a majority, can take the hard decisions that signal a commitment to transformative reform. A good place to look for answers may be the past. India had a 25-year-long unbroken tryst with coalition politics between 1989 and 2014. Let's start with the Atal Bihari Vajpayee-led NDAs, which were a fractious rabble of anti-Congress politics. The Sangh's more purposeful and transformative ideological fetishes were banished from NDA's common minimum programs. Many wrote this fractious coalition off even before it could get going. But some Vajpayee diehards have pointed out that by scaling up India's nuclear capability and winning a war against Pakistan, just 2 things mark Vajpayee out for greatness. And while these achievements cemented his place in India's history, the Vajpayee years got a lot more done on the economic, legislative, and foreign policy front. Vajpayee must be credited with kick-starting the process of structural economic reforms and capacity building. Vajpayee also very nearly totally transformed India's foreign policy. India's relationship with America literally took the, quote, next step, unquote, in marking a departure from Nehruvian non-alignment. India has never looked back, ever since becoming deeply entrenched in the US sphere of influence. Truth be told, the UPA, that often seemed to be at war with itself, also had a transformational impact on the polity. Laboring under 4 power centers, the Sonia-led NAC, the Manmohan-led PMO, the Pranab-led GOMs, and the whims of veto-happy coalition partners, the UPA brought in the RTI, the MG Narega, welfareism, the Companies Act, and educational reforms. India also won nuclear autonomy under the UPA, let's not forget that. This is quite impressive. The PM Modi-led NDA 3.0 is far more cohesive than the Vajpayee and Dr. Manmohan Singh-led administrations. Most importantly, the Chief Executive Officer himself is an instinctual politician who still enjoys a huge cachet of support when it comes to the public. Modi can get things done. In fact, Modi in his third term has moved quickly to convince that, quote, business as usual, unquote. Modi's cabinet remains more or less unchanged. The broad thrust of his policies remain unchanged. The few compromises he's made have pitched him as a chastened leader who is willing to consult and lead by consensus. This can only be good for democracy. There's no reason why the Modi-led NDA 3.0 won't at the very least achieve what the Vajpayee and Dr. Singh-led coalitions did in their time. But viewers, this is a show called Crux of the Matter. It's not for me to give an opinion. I can direct the conversation in a direction, but I have no control over the responses. And neither will I look to impose my views upon those who are going to participate today. And we have some of the most incisive political minds, authors on our panel today. And I want to introduce our panel, beginning with Neerja Chaudhary, who's written a very well-received book on how prime ministers decide. So she's probably one of the right people to go to talk about Mr. Modi and how he's sort of acquitting himself in office in his third term. There's Smita Prakash, who's observed politics for a long time, commentates, has a very, very popular podcast going. And there's, of course, Pavan Verma, evergreen, I would say, intellectual, public intellectual, author. So we can only have a good conversation today, and let's move towards that. And I want to begin by asking the more fundamental questions. First of Ms. Neerja Chaudhary. Ms. Chaudhary, what do you make really at this moment of how the Prime Minister has acquitted himself? Do you sense that he is approaching his job differently?
Look, initially it seemed that, as you said, it would be business as usual. And he wanted to give that message very clearly. The cabinet was almost repeated, as you said. Other appointments, whether it was the NSA or the principal secretary to the Prime Minister, they were repeated. So he wanted to give the impression, okay, we are down to 240. We are heading a coalition government with NDA partners. But things are going to be not very different. I'm totally in charge, in grip of things. So that was the initial impression. Of course, the result itself probably came as a real shock to the BJP brass, including probably the Prime Minister. The subsequent decisions that we've seen, or the panning out we've seen in the last month or a little more, is slightly different. People used to say, Modi ki fitran nahi hai coalition sarkar chalane ki. And Modi has become a coalition leader. Now, you can call it weakness. You can call it good sense. If you look at the rollbacks that have taken place, on lateral entry in government, on Waqf board being put on the back burner. So I think I would look for a different Modi surfacing.
Right.
Can handle this motley, pressure politics.
Okay. I'll come to whether the Prime Minister's position at the head of the coalition will remain unchallenged as we go forward. But I want to bring in Smita Prakash and Pavan Verma ji. Smita Prakash, have the initial apprehensions around instability and NDA 3.0 been laid to rest from what you've seen over the last 100 days?
Thank you, Rahul. I think the election results of June 2024 certainly put a spanner in the works as far as bold and exceptional reforms in the Modi government, what it was expected to make. As far as managing the coalition, which you're asking me, I think he has come about as somebody who's sensitive and managed the coalition partners well. The compulsions of coalition politics is something that has not seemed to weigh down on his shoulders. I mean, the first 100 days of a third term ought to be celebratory, frankly, because these days, where do you see, Rahul, world leaders being elected for a third term?
True.
Barely. I mean, look at what happened with Biden. He had to withdraw even his nomination and things like that. But, I think what is happening is that various ministries have been told to produce a blueprint of what the first 100 days, what were the tasks that was laid out. Because remember, he gave the task before the ministries, even before the elections took place. So the first 100 days task was already laid out. Now, the fact that the bureaucracy is working hard to come up with the 100-day blueprint goes to show that the bureaucracy is on board with the government. That itself is something that we as journalists should read the tea leaves. Apparently, like if you were to look, if I was to say from the top of my head, what were the things that the tasks that they have been working on, I would pick, I think, this creation of smart cities, 12 industrial smart cities across industrial corridors, which he's announced, the high-speed rail corridors, the Vande Bharat sleeper trains, then the 20,000 crores under PM Kisan that he's announcing, also the 20 million new rural houses that he's going to be making in the next few years. These are important, and of course we shouldn't miss that which was recently announced, which is health coverage for anyone above 70 under Ayushman Bharat. So I think the 100 days that we have seen, the BJP has managed its coalition partners well, but where there seems to be a little bit of a rocky relationship is with its partner, the RSS. That relationship needs to be ironed out. The details of them, the contours of it, we don't know much about, because neither the RSS nor the BJP go on record to say what is the issue. But there seems to be a little bit of an awkward situation in the first 100 days. But I think as far as the government delivering is concerned, few roadblocks, but he has managed to do quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, in the first term, despite his big, or the first two terms, despite his big majorities, there were very huge reforms that were put on the back burner. Let's not forget that. I mean, you're talking about the 3 farm laws, the labor codes, and other stuff that I have a list of. But I want to bring in Pawan Verma. Mr. Verma, look, the thing that you have said in the past on this show is that you were sort of apprehensive about the authoritarian streak running now through perhaps the government and then through the polity. So will the inbuilt checks and balances make the NDA 3.0 led by the Prime Minister more sensitive now to not just the opposition but to the people's needs?
Thank you, Rahul. First of all, I'd like to say that 100 days of a new government, which is supposed to last for 5 years, is a bit early to assess what the road ahead would be like. I say this also because this is a qualitatively new kind of government for a Prime Minister like Mr. Narendra Modi. The entire assessment hinges on a critical word called invincibility. Over the last 10 years, when Mr. Modi, by his sheer grit and leadership qualities, managed for the first time since 1984 to have a government with an absolute majority, with him as the unquestioned leader, which he repeated in even better numbers for his second term. Now, after that, you must have that as a background to assess how he is likely to perform now or how he has performed up till now. I talked of the word invincibility because in the last 10 years when he had an absolute majority, even when he did wrong, there were enough people with conviction to say that it must be right. But now, when he is in a minority government running a coalition, even when he does right, there are voices both within his own fold and of course the opposition which is willing to say it is wrong. It's a subtle, dramatic but important shift in perception. This problem is compounded by the fact that while you gave the example of the Atal Bihari Vajpayee government and of that of Dr. Manmohan Singh, In the case of Prime Minister Modi, it is a cliche to almost repeat that he has not been tested temperamentally on running a coalition government. He's run governments with absolute majorities in the state and the center. And now when he has to run a minority government with two disparate allies, at least one of them somewhat wobbly, which is the JDU in Bihar, I think the last 100 years are marked by Prime Minister Modi attempting to revive his lost mojo. He is trying to understand how the scenario has changed and what should be his role within these changed circumstances, given the manner he had got used to functioning.
Right.
It requires a period of adjustment, Rahul. And I think, therefore, in the last 100 days, we have seen a level of A, lack of enthusiasm, B, the absence of any dramatic outlining of a vision for the future in spite of a coalition government. So we have no new parameters to judge what the new government in these circumstances will do. We have a government with allies where I know, for instance, in the case of the JDU, with Mr. Nitish Kumar not entirely at the helm and yet at the helm, how the party will continue to be a cohesive whole behind the BJP and as a part of the NDA is questionable. And in Andhra Pradesh, you have Mr. Chandrababu Naidu, who sees every decision of the government from the prism of not only his own state, but his position in the state.
Right.
So, in this scenario, in addition, the Prime Minister seems to have, as was pointed out, I think, by Smita, there are subterranean and sometimes overt tensions within a fold that was earlier completely compliant. And I am now talking of what is happening within the BJP and the RSS. And therefore, if you ask me now, in the first 100 days, the government has been more reactive than proactive. Reactive in the sense that it is for the first time that the country saw in Parliament, where when the leader of opposition, Mr. Rahul Gandhi, makes a speech or somebody else, the government is reacting to what the opposition is saying and not the other way around, where the opposition is reacting to what the government's agenda is.
Right.
That needs to change. And some of the symptoms of a person yet looking to find his feet are what has been mentioned by both Nirja and Smita, the retractions.
Okay.
Where a decision is made and then retracted. So I think we should assess it in this perspective.
Okay. So this doesn't necessarily mean that we are becoming we are going to be ruled by a more sensitive government. It is just a government that will be sort of bent by the will of compulsion. Okay, I mean that's one other way of looking at it. Let me ask this other question, because you use the word invincibility, and that takes me to the next formatted question of this show. And I want to bring in Smita Prakash and Neerja Chaudhary. How central are the upcoming assembly polls to not just the durability of NDA 3.0? Ms. Chaudhary, but also this aura of invincibility?
I think the coming assembly elections, 4 of them, 2 we have been announced, Haryana and Jammu and Kashmir, and Maharashtra and Jharkhand down the line, and maybe Delhi. Will Delhi elections be advanced to be clubbed together with Maharashtra and Jharkhand? We will see that. But certainly these 4 or 5 elections, their outcome will determine this whole issue of how invincible the Prime Minister is, and how invincible the government he heads is. Because so far, if they manage, say, to win two, then yes, okay, there was a setback, but they are still on a comeback trail. They are popular in some areas. Of course, the Lok Sabha election showed. In certain states of India, they took a beating like UP. UP overturned the whole election, 2024. Rajasthan, they had a bit of loss. Haryana, they had a bit of loss. But Madhya Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Himachal, I mean, they peaked as in the past. So, does Narendra Modi still remain popular in these states if he manages to win them? But suppose, hypothetically speaking, they lose all of these 4 or 5, then yes, that is going to be a major setback to this whole issue of how popular Narendra Modi remains. And what you said at the outset, you haven't asked this question, will he remain Prime Minister? Or will there be from within the party, from within the RSS, moves, make way for somebody else? I don't see this happening as of now, but say 2 years down the line. And of course, much will also depend. I will say this, that, Narasimha Rao, who was Prime Minister, initially led a minority government. They didn't have a majority. And he ruled with the support of other regional parties. And people used to say Narasimha Rao should continue to have a minority, head a minority, because he's very good at running it, which nobody else can do. But 2 years down the line, he broke other parties.
Right.
Congress acquired a majority. And in some way, Narasimha Rao's problems also started then. Now, will Narendra Modi and the top brass of the BJP also be tempted to go for that kind of an alternative and acquire a majority? Pavan mentioned JDU. Yes, JDU is not at the moment, it's a party of individuals.
True.
And will be very vulnerable in the time to come. There may be other smaller parties, but so far, the Prime Minister is taking along his allies.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so I think the point that you're making, and let me bring in Smita Prakash also, is that, look, question marks will be asked, or will be sort of put against the name of Mr. Modi. Questions will be asked, sort of, in a way of speaking, after these 5 elections. Do you believe that? Or do you think that, look, I mean, parties win and lose elections, it happens, and it'll take a little bit of time for the BJP to regroup, etc., etc.?
Well, I think there is, Rahul, palpable anxiety in many political circles about Maharashtra, Jharkhand and Haryana elections, the permutations and combinations that are still happening in some of the states. I agree with Nija that losing in any or even in one state out here would be a setback. Winning will be good. But will that lead to a rebellion? I don't think so. Okay. Will it result in vaulting ambitions if they are made apparent? The BJP frowns upon this. They call it discipline, or they call it paddhati, they call it whatever, training. It is not looked upon kindly if anybody shows over-ambitious nature just because the party hasn't done well in an election. If you recall, Rahul, in the first 100 days after 2014, as you mentioned, the Prime Minister came up with several measures, like, the Swachh Bharat, which was like revolutionary.
That's true.
But in 2014 too, in the first 2 months, I'm not going into the 100 days, but in the first 2 months, the Prime Minister, he had just come in as a chief minister.
Yeah.
He was learning the ropes of how to be in charge in Delhi. He announced Swachh Bharat, yes, and he picked up a broom and started cleaning the roads, and he got into government offices and started, cleaning the files and got bureaucrats to do that. And the bureaucrats initially was like, this is not a Prime Minister's job. But everybody had to kind of get used to it that this Prime Minister does things differently. In 2019, he comes back to power with absolute majority as one of the strongest leaders of our times, on riding on that wave of surgical strikes. Not a war prime minister, not somebody who has won a war, but he establishes his image as someone who will force compliance internally and externally if need be.
Right.
Now, that's not an image that one is seeing projected right now.
Okay.
In the past 100 days, he has seemed he has seemed like somebody who has come, like I'm using the word again, shell shocked probably. So one can safely say
Well,
that
maybe he's-
if the first 100 days of the first two terms were one of euphoria and triumph, it's different this time.
Okay, 30 seconds. I've just got 30 seconds on the show. Pawan Verma, what do you make of this?
In September 2025, when the Prime Minister turns 75,
Interesting.
if there does not appear to be a major reversal
Okay.
of his relative decline now, there could be issues, but this is all crystal gazing.
Okay, crystal gazing, and we know sometimes that can be dangerous. We leave it at this, viewers, the crux of the matter. Thank you for watching.